Welcome back to the show. We are up to the F in Transform. We are into the home straight. The F stands for finding our true self. So what's the point? Why are we doing this? And I go back to all the time these days. I used to love the old personal development world, the traditional personal development, self-help worlds. And I often look at those worlds now and think they're not helping. Like they're actually just compounding loads of this shit that we've got in our lives, because what they're really doing a lot of the time, not all of them, but what they're doing is taking the problems we've already got and they're building on top of them. So I often say to people like, Coach, look, if you want me to help you become the best business person in the world, the richest person in the world, whatever it is you want to do, sleep with more women, sleep with more men, buy more houses, buy a better car, I can help you do that. I can help you tap into the deepest, darkest parts of your personality. I can build on the fact that you've got low self-worth and you want to prove yourself to the world, and we can get you to where you want to be. That's ultimately what loads of the personal development and self-help worlds do without realizing it. I don't think it's done intentionally, and I don't think it's done with malice. But ultimately, in my view, that's what happens now. The whole point of this work is that you can do all of those things, and I've been down that path without realizing it. And where everybody gets to eventually, no matter how much money they make or how many things they achieve, is realizing they're miserable, they're unfulfilled, they're empty, they're depressed, their life isn't what they thought it was going to be. And what that comes down to is because they're not who they're meant to be. They've created this identity, this persona that isn't them. It's an act. And that's why they feel hollow. That's why they feel unfulfilled. I'm speaking from experience massively here. Everyone I work with feels the same way. Maybe you're watching this or listening to this because it resonates with you on that level. So the whole point of this work is to find out who we really are, find out who we want to be, and then become that person. Be true to ourselves every day, no matter what that means, whilst being as kind and compassionate as we can be to everybody else and to the outside world, but just being ourselves. And this goes back to, again, overlapping with other stuff we've talked about. But one of my favorite analogies is to think about when you may have heard the phrase "all the world's a stage." It comes from a Shakespeare poem. All the world's a stage. And when I first started getting into this, I loved the idea, and I came up with the analogy of the problem with all of that is the way that's portrayed to us is all the world's a stage, and you're an actor. We're an actor. We're the lead in our own play. And think of it like this. What actually happens is when you're born into a stage production, into a musical. I don't know why I've always thought it's Mamma Mia. You're born into Mamma Mia, the musical about ABBA. And when you're born, you're handed to people, and those people hand you a script, and they hand you a load of costumes, and they tell you what songs you're singing, and they tell you what your role is. And then you play that role. That's your job. You step into the musical and you play that role. And what this work is because where it comes from is we get to a point where sooner or later we look around us and we go, hang on. And this is what happened to me in my life. Hang on. I don't like Mamma Mia. I think it's shit. I don't like the songs. Why am I singing them? Why am I playing this role? Why? And everybody has a different role depending on who you are in your play, in your show. I was born and I was one of the lead men. Like I was, someone said to me once, you're like Simba out of the Lion King. Like, and this traditionally in families in ages gone by, generations gone by, was the case for boys. Hopefully that's changing now. And I think it is changing and we need to do more, but we are getting there. But it's the boy is held aloft and he will be the savior of the family. That's exactly what it felt like from when I was young and right up until recent years. The golden child, that was my role. Some other people are cast into the role of the black sheep without realizing it. Everybody puts them in the role of the black sheep and that's where they stay and they play this character and nobody understands why. But they're taught it subconsciously from the moment they come into the world. Maybe you were a support character, maybe you were a lead, whatever it was, you were given this role by other people. The kicker is the people who gave you the role probably didn't even pick their own roles. This has been passed down through the generations. So the roles have been given by other people all the way through. The problem is you get to a point in life like I did, maybe you are there now, which as I say is why you're here. where you think, I don't want to play this role. I don't want to be in this play. And all of a sudden I got to a point where it was like, I don't want to be in Mamma Mia. I want to be in The Greatest Showman. That's the play I want to be in. I want to do those songs. And one day, picture it like this. This is the problem with this work, or one of the challenges. And I remember chatting to my therapist about this. It was like, Paul, you're making all these changes in your life, but remember, you're like, he used like the analogy of like, you're like a leg on a table. And if you take that leg away, it destabilizes the whole table. I love this analogy because it's like, picture it, you're in this play, you're in this musical, and everybody, the audience, everybody around you, your family and friends, they're waiting for you to go to the front of the stage and sing the big ABBA number. And you walk to the front and you just sing a Greatest Showman song. And everyone's like, what the fuck are you doing? This isn't what you're meant to do. This isn't the right song. What are you doing? And you go, look, I'm not doing Mamma Mia anymore. I'm doing The Greatest Showman. But that's the point of this work. And we have to take all of that into consideration. It's a big wider issue. But the point of this is, we don't just want to be the actor in a show that we were put into by other people anymore. What we want to do is become the producer, the director, and the writer of our own play, and be the lead person. That's the whole point. That's what we want to do. The problem with this is, again, subconsciously, we were all born into, metaphorically speaking, usually a village and a tribe. You may have actually been born into a village and a tribe, literally. But for most of us, we were metaphorically born into a village and a tribe. And what happens in that village and tribe is we are given messages. We are given these roles throughout our life. Now, you, like me, might have been told growing up things like, you can be whatever you want to be. You can do whatever you want to do. But something I learned going through all of this is that that's true to a certain level. What people, when they say that to you, usually mean subconsciously is you can be whoever you want to be and you can do whatever you want to do within the boundaries of the village and within the rules of the tribe. And I see this time and time again with people. I said, a really great example, I said to one of my mates a few weeks ago, who is a lawyer, really successful. His wife's a lawyer, lovely, two of my favorite people in the world, and they've got a young baby daughter now. And he said to me, well, I just want her to be happy. I just want her to do whatever she wants to do in life. And I said, that's lovely to hear. I said, what about if what she wants to do is just sit around on the couch all day watching cartoons and playing computer games? What if that's what makes her happy? And he paused and smiled. I went, well, I mean, I'd want her to have a good job. And I said, so you're already subconsciously, without realizing it, putting limits on what she can do with her life. And this is why it's so powerful. We do all of this stuff with the best of intentions, when actually that's what's been done to us as well. With the best of intentions, people have set limitations around what we can do and who we can be. And we create these identities to fit in to the village and tribe to which we were born. And that's what takes us to a huge topic, which is something I love to talk about, which there is no such thing as self-sabotage. If you like the personal development world, if you like the self-help world, you'll have heard that phrase self-sabotage. And what that is basically is when we think we want to change our life, we think up here in our brain, I want to change my life. I want to do something. Let's say I want to get fit. I'm going to start running every day. And you might start for a few days. You might even do it for a few weeks. And then at some point you stop and you don't do it anymore. And people go, oh, I always sabotage myself. It's self-sabotage. And that happens for this reason and this reason and this reason. And I've heard so many different explanations of that. And as I started doing this work, I realized it's bullshit. At least in my interpretation of the world, it's bullshit. Why? Because self-sabotage assumes that you want to change, that your system wants to change. And that's not true. What's happened is, for decades, your system, as we've talked about in the past, has been building up entire identities, multiple personalities to meet your needs. And your system already meets your needs. It already meets the needs for certainty and control and variety and significance and love. It already meets all of those things subconsciously. You might not have any knowledge of it. It's all happening subconsciously and probably unhealthily in many ways, but those needs are being met. Remember, the control deck in your head is not interested in your happiness. It's only interested in your survival and you meeting your needs. So when one day you wake up and you consciously say, oh, I heard someone saying it might be a good idea to go for a run and start running every day. You consciously say, I'm going to change. But your system goes, no, we've already got our identity, and it's been working well for us for decades. Why would I change? So you can consciously overcome that for a while, but sooner or later, your old identity takes over. And that's why it's not self-sabotage. It's self-protection. Your current identity is protecting itself from extinction because it already knows it works. It doesn't need to change. So the first thing to do then is to acknowledge that, is to understand why you've developed these characters, why you've developed the way you have to meet those needs, and then to overcome them, to meet the needs in healthier ways. That's why most of the personal development world traditionally and the self-help world don't work for most people, because we're looking at things in the wrong way. By looking at it in this way, we can get right to the root, and we can understand why we might go running for 3 weeks. We might go on a diet for 3 weeks and then it stops. And we can really deal with what's wrong, which has got nothing to do with running and nothing to do with dieting. Same for all of the different problems in our life. So this leads us to the next phase of finding our true self, which goes back to the multiple personality work we've done before. And in the book, in this phase, we go into exploring more of your characters. So if you've looked at this before, if you've watched or listened to the multiple personality episodes, you might have already started to identify a few of your characters. This bit is to try and find more of them. So ones you might not have thought about. So I'll give you a few to prompt you. You can have a think about them. And then the idea is, once we can get further into them, once we can know more about who we really are, we can think about who we really want to be. Does that make sense? So let's go through them one at a time. I'll just give you a handful of them. If you haven't thought of these already, you may have already thought of some of them. One of them, a big one for most people, is the worrier. So that would be the anxious side of you. You may not call it anxiety right now. You may call it worry. You may call it something else. But it's that part of you that always thinks about the worst things that can happen, is always on edge. If you have insomnia, I was chatting to a mate about this last night. Insomnia is basically anxiety. That's all it is. Insomnia is you lying in bed worrying about things. I would never in the past have identified as being a worrier or being anxious, but that's exactly what I was doing. The thing I was doing, going back to the stories we tell ourselves, I was looking at the things everybody else was anxious and worried about and thinking, God, I don't worry about any of those things because they're just often just not on my radar. They're just not big enough. I remember a senior female partner in the law firm, the biggest law firm I worked in a long time ago, said to me once, Paul, it's dead interesting. She said, like, trainee lawyers come in and junior lawyers come into my office in floods of tears. And when I ask them to tell me what's wrong and they tell me what they're crying about, I can't even see what the problem is because my problems are so much bigger and more challenging than theirs. I'm just like, well, that's not even a big deal at all. And that's where I'd got to in my life. It was like, I'd see my dad worrying about a £5 payment that had come out of his bank account. And I'd be thinking, God, I never worry about stuff like that because I'm thinking about trying to find £40,000 in the next 4 days to pay a VAT bill or my wage bill or something else. What I didn't realize was, because of the stories I told myself about who I was worrying about those things. I was anxious about those things. They were just bigger ticket versions of what other people were worrying about. So think about that. Do you have a worrier character? Do you have an anxious character? You are likely to. So if you don't think you have, maybe ask people close to you, can they see it in you? Same with these other characters. Another big one in the world in which we live is the dark night. So the dark night is the part of us that wants to save everybody else. And this can be quite a stealth character, and it can be dressed up as a really good part of ourselves because we've all been taught we should help other people. But what that actually means a lot of the time is we're sticking our nose into things that have got nothing to do with us. And I was hugely guilty of this. I had a big dark night character. One of the problems with the way our societies are built, we see a lot of people talking about the damage that Disney movies in the past have done to women and make women think that they need men to save them, which is absolutely true. And at the same time, something most people don't talk about is that is equally damaging to boys watching these shows and movies, because what it teaches boys is you need to go and save people. In order to be a full human, in order to be fulfilled, you need to be rescuing people all the time. that doesn't just apply to men, that applies to women as well. We find ourselves sticking our nose into other people's business and trying to save them when they didn't ask us to. They didn't ask us to get involved. That is an egotistical thing. One of my favorite coaches said to me once, think of it like Batman. And the only time you get involved and you try and help someone else is if they put the bat signal up. If they ask for your help, you can offer your help. But if people say no, it's got nothing to do with you. Stop trying to save everyone. The Dark Knight character. Think about how often that applies in your life. It's a usually quite common one. Ties in, lots of these overlap and tie into each other. The people pleaser. I'd be amazed if you don't have a people pleaser character. We've all been raised usually to please other people, to make sure other people are okay, to put other people's needs before our own. It's dressed up as a good thing. It's very often a very, very damaging thing. We've touched on it in the past. We'll talk about it more in the future. Another big one, the judge. This is huge for most people. Not only judging other people, but judging ourselves internally. We're usually doing that. We've talked in the past about the thoughts we have, the way we talk to ourselves inside our own head. It's huge. Have a look at that. How often are you judging other people? If you tell yourself a story, you don't judge other people. Just observe yourself. Start asking yourself, maybe you call it something else. Maybe you don't call it judgment, but it's likely you are looking at other people's lives and you are judging them for something, whatever that is. Two others, we'll do two more. One, the perfectionist. Now, the perfectionist can operate in stealth mode as well. Lots of people will know that they are a perfectionist, and it will often, as happened to me growing up, again, it's often described as a positive thing. Like, it's good to be a perfectionist. I'm a reformed perfectionist these days. I'm not interested in perfect. It is not achievable, and it is very unhealthy. There is a part of most of us that is the perfectionist. A stealth one to flag, which is really interesting, is a stealth way the perfectionist comes in, is to say the line or something like the line, oh, I'll do that thing when this happens. So whatever it is, oh, I'll start dating again once I've lost 10 pounds. Oh, I'll start going to the gym again once I've bought nicer trainers. What all of these things are is perfectionism by stealth. It's like, I'm not good enough to do this thing until I'm perfect. It's bullshit. The best thing we can do is just start whatever it is we want to start. So look out for that. Look out for the perfectionist. And then the last one, which is a huge topic in the book and one which is very difficult to sum up without causing problems and controversy, but I'll mention it just because it's so important, is the victim. And this is a huge part of everybody I have ever met, including myself. And I would never have seen this in myself in the past. But it's the part of us that paints ourselves as the victim in everything we do, or in lots of things we do. And because if we paint ourselves as the victim, going back to previous episode in goodies and baddies, if we're the victim, we can't possibly be the baddie. And if we're the victim, we don't really need to take responsibility for anything because that's everybody else's fault. It's a huge part of most people's personality base. It's very, very damaging. It's maybe one of the most damaging parts of our personalities. And one of the things that it's really important to understand where it comes from and why and what needs it's meeting. Going back to all of this we've talked about in the past, when you identify these characters, it's important to figure out what needs they're meeting, which of the human emotional needs they're meeting, and which of your practical needs are they meeting. What are they doing for you on a day-to-day basis? So the victim, for example, might help you to get out of doing things because you say, "Oh, I'm sick, I'm tired, so I can't do whatever you want me to do." Instead of taking responsibility and actually saying, "I don't want to do the thing you want me to do," goes back to boundaries. So they're just a few to think about. If you haven't done any of that exercise, if you haven't thought about them, it's worth thinking about. As always, if you want to do these exercises properly, it goes into way more detail in the book. So it's worth having a look at the book. The audiobook is now available as well as the paperback and the Kindle. So if you want to listen to me talk for 14 hours about this stuff, you can get all the detail and the exercises in order. The last thing to talk about before we wrap this one up is something I like to talk about, which is deep sea diving. So it's another analogy. As you know, I love analogies. And this is about doing this type of work. And what you might find if you decide to do this stuff is that you make some progress, then you stop, then you plateau. It gets a bit frightening. You don't want to go any further. I always like to say it's like deep sea diving. If you've been deep sea diving, you will get this. If you haven't, it's a very basic summary of diving. When you go deep sea diving, scuba diving, the pressure increases the further you go down. So as you go down and as you come back up, you've got to be aware of the pressure increases and decreases, and you've got to acclimatize to that change in pressure. It's the same with this work. So the more of this work we do, the more we're exposing ourselves to the pressure of the deep sea dive, and the more we've got to take time to make sure we're okay and be kind to ourselves and look after ourselves, and then wait until we go deeper. So what I will often see, what's happened in my own life, in the work I've done, and with people I coach, is they will get to a point and then we need to just wait for a bit. We need to just give that time to settle in before they go any deeper. If you find that happening to yourself as you go through this work, the key is to be kind to yourself. We all go at our own pace. There is no set speed for this, for you to get through this. It can take years, it can take months, it can take weeks. However your system responds to it, just be kind, take it easy. Whatever it needs to do is what it needs to do. Keep that analogy in mind as you go through it all. It'll help. All of this ties into the same thing, which is figuring out who we really are and figuring out who we really want to be. Remember, going back to the stage show analogy, what stage show do you want to be in? Be your own writer, be your own director, be your own producer, and be the star of it rather than being someone else's. That's it. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, share it with someone else. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if you've got any questions. See you soon.